1914. The whistle blows. For a moment, time seems to stop. The damp, blood-soaked trench, the mud clinging to his uniform, the distant crack of rifle fire, all of it fades into a single, unbearable silence. Then, like a dam breaking, the soldiers surge forward. Lieutenant Friedrich Keller grips his rifle tighter. His boots sink into the mud as he scrambles over the trench wall, his breath coming in short, panicked gasps. He knows what awaits him. Everyone does. The chattering rattle of machine guns, the deafening roar of artillery, the sharp, almost delicate whistle of shells slicing through the air before they crash into the earth, tearing men apart like paper. The ground ahead is a wasteland, barbed wire, craters filled with corpses, the skeletal remains of trees that once stood tall. Somewhere to his left, a man screams, then falls silent. He runs. There is no choice. Bullets snap past his ears, kicking up dirt, thudding into bodies, tearing flesh and bone. A shell explodes a few meters away, the force throwing Keller to the ground. His head rings. His vision blurs. He rolls onto his back, staring up at the sky, the same sky that, just yesterday, he had looked up at while writing a letter to his mother. The letter is still in his breast pocket. She will never read it. A shadow looms over him. Another soldier, British, young, terrified. The boy raises his rifle, hands shaking. Keller reaches for his own weapon, but he already knows he's too slow. A gunshot echoes across the battlefield. The British soldier falls first, a bullet straight through the chest. Keller blinks. He's still alive. He turns his head and sees it, stamped into the cold steel of the boy's rifle. Made by Krupp. War is hell. But for some, war is business. Chapter 1. The Profiteers of War. The story of Friedrich Keller is only one of thousands who experienced this hell on Earth. But war wasn't hell for everybody. Nearly 300 kilometers away from the Western Front, life in Essen, Germany, was looking completely different. At least for those who could afford it. A man with a well-groomed mustache reading the newspaper. The outlook of a rapid victory, as promised by the German Oberkommando, is nowhere near. The war has stalled. Good for him. The longer the war continues, the more need there will be for him, and that means more money. He has no intention of questioning the war. To him, it's a business. The lives of soldiers are just part of the transaction. Friedrich Keller can't believe his eyes. He just saw a boy getting shot, blood dripping through his blue uniform. Off Keller, he hears another lieutenant screaming at him. Completely shocked, he starts getting up and rushes to the first trench. It was a bloodbath, beyond what anyone who willingly signed up for this war could ever imagine. As Keller dives into the trench, his thoughts swirl. Was it worth it? Did he truly believe in this cause when he first enlisted? Gustav Krupp was still reading the newspaper while grooming his mustache. He is the head of the industrial empire Krupp, directly responsible for the never-sleeping war machine in Germany. His factory in Essen produces 1.36 million artillery shells a month. Heavy artillery, steel, and weapons. Krupp knew exactly what was going on at the front, but he saw himself as a patriot, a man who brought glory to the German Empire, supplying them with everything they needed to crush the enemy. But was it patriotism or pure greed driving him? Krupp never questioned the morality of his role, only how he could increase his profits. Remorse for what the people on the front were going through because of his weapons was non-existent, at least not publicly. But what was known publicly is that it made Krupp unbelievably wealthy. Calm returned. At least for a moment, Keller was resting in the trench. They conquered the French position, though with high casualties, they won. For now. He is trying to sleep, but his mind can't stop thinking. He already threw up 3 times today. His body can't comprehend what he went through during the day. The faces of the fallen haunt him. Was this worth it? Next to him is another soldier, also not sleeping. He asks him if he is all right. While talking to him, he notices something strange. The soldier's hands are shaking uncontrollably. Keller starts talking with him about what had happened today. But what the people didn't know during that time was that this was one of the biggest diseases soldiers would go through, even long after the war. Shell shock, or what we now call post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, was a condition widely observed among soldiers during and after World War I. It was caused by the intense psychological and physical trauma experienced during combat, particularly from the constant bombardment of artillery shells, the same shells that were produced by Krupp. Shell shock often started with uncontrollable shaking, unexplained pain, and severe mental health problems. Triggered by loud noises, they could lead to anxiety and panic attacks. What people didn't understand at the time was that it wasn't just the physical destruction of war that left its mark, it was the psychological toll. Many soldiers were simply sent home, their trauma unaddressed, left to suffer in silence. Meanwhile, Gustav Krupp was thinking about how he could make his war machine more profitable. Would he ever think about the men like Keller and the soldier with shaking hands? Or was his wealth, his empire, enough to silence any trace of doubt? Chapter 2. The Never-Ending War. By 1916, after 2 long years of relentless conflict, there was no end in sight. The war had become an endless cycle of death, and the soldiers knew it. It was July 1st. Keller was still alive. But what did it matter? He had survived, but the man who had enlisted was long gone. His soul had been torn apart on these blood-soaked fields. His morals, his emotions, gone. He had become a machine, a cog in a monstrous, never-ending machine. No different from the gun he held in his hands. The trench was silent for a moment, a brief respite. Then, the sound of footsteps, thousands of them, muddied and desperate. Screams, the sudden, deafening roar of machine guns. Explosions that seemed to tear the very earth apart. And the cries. The endless cries of the wounded, the dying. Keller felt nothing. He had stopped feeling anything long ago. The enemy was planning a counterattack. It was inevitable. The tension in the air was suffocating. Keller stood there, barely aware of his surroundings. He was somewhere in the middle of a kilometer-long trench, surrounded by soldiers who had, like him, become numb to it all. The battle raged, and he was just another body in a sea of soldiers. By the end of the day, nearly 20,000 soldiers had been killed, but the first assault had failed. The line held, for now. But that was just the beginning. Keller was about to be pulled into the Battle of the Somme, one of the largest and deadliest battles of the war. He could feel it in the air. This would be the turning point, or perhaps it would just be another day in a war that would never end. Gustav Krupp, on the other hand, had never been more powerful. His factory was booming, the machines never stopped, and the demand for his weapons seemed endless. The sound of the assembly line, churning out artillery shells, was a rhythm he knew well. His wealth was growing exponentially, and with every new weapon produced, with every new order, he was further entrenched in the war machine. Krupp had mastered the art of supply and demand, and he was more than willing to supply to anyone. His factory was filled with prisoners of war, just like the soldiers on the front lines. They were just numbers to him, tools, no different from the weapons they were forced to manufacture. The war would continue, and so would the profits. Krupp's thoughts were always on the future, always calculating. As he read the reports about the Battle of the Somme, he couldn't help but smile. More ammunition, more shells, more profit. The war would continue, he was certain of it. The demand for his products would never fade. In fact, could only grow. But there was something else in those reports that made him pause. The neutral countries, the ones who weren't officially involved in the war, were buying from him too. He knew they were selling those weapons to the Allies. His weapons, his shells. Krupp was supplying both sides, and yet no one questioned him. Why would they? The war was profitable for everyone involved, even for the ones who were supposed to be the enemy. Keller, meanwhile, was starting to see things more clearly. He had witnessed the enemy fall before him, a British soldier dying in the mud. He had seen it all. And in that moment, something inside him snapped. He realized that this war, this senseless, endless war, had nothing to do with glory or honor anymore. It had become something far darker. The thought gnawed at him day after day. Krupp, back in his factory, was creating weapons to kill him and his comrades. The weapons that were supposed to keep them alive on the front lines were the same ones that would end their lives. He couldn't escape the thought. What if Krupp knew? What if he didn't care? As the battle for the Somme raged on, Keller couldn't shake the feeling that everything he had once believed in, the cause, the glory, the honor, had been a lie. And somewhere far away, Krupp was making money off of it all. Keller's blood, his comrades' blood, was filling Krupp's pockets. But there was something else, something darker that lingered in Keller's mind. Would this war ever end? Or would it simply consume them all? Chapter 3. The long-hoped victory. 11th of November, 1922. Keller sits on the front porch of his house, lighting his cigar. Even though the weather is cold, he sits outside, like he does every year. Today, 4 years ago, the war ended for him. He survived it physically. Mentally, he has a long, hard road in front of him to comprehend all the things he went through. Germany lost the war, but for him, the war was already lost when the first shot was fired. Even after 4 years, he still thinks about the meaninglessness of this conflict. The people that died on both sides for nothing. He takes the time to smoke his cigar while thinking and praying for all the people that died. His comrades, friends, and so-called enemies. Gustav Krupp sat at his large, polished desk, the soft light of a desk lamp casting a shadow over the piles of reports in front of him. The numbers were staggering. Artillery shells produced, ammunition manufactured, steel forged, all the critical components for an industrial empire that refused to be silenced by the Treaty of Versailles. The treaty had sought to dismantle Germany's war potential, severely restricting the country's military capabilities. But Krupp had found ways to circumvent these restrictions. Germany was officially forbidden from maintaining large arms manufacturers, yet Krupp's factory, hidden behind a veil of legal maneuvering and strategic alliances, had continued to operate with remarkable efficiency. Officially, it was focused on producing civilian products, but Krupp was always preparing for a future that he believed would require weapons, steel ammunition once again. His factories had become covert centers of rearmament, providing military supplies to countries that weren't bound by the terms of the treaty, such as neutral Switzerland. Germany had lost the war, but Krupp won. He and many other war profiteers are the only real winners in this conflict. And soon his son will take his place as chairman of Krupp AG and support another regime. A regime that will start a war even more bloody and crucial than a soldier like Friedrich Keller could ever imagine.